You know, the thing about Ryan Reynolds is that he's one of those celebrities who's built such a strong image around himself that most people just accept it without ever looking deeper. He's the funny guy, the sarcastic one, the quick-witted dad who's always joking with his wife online, who roasts himself and somehow makes even his brand deals look like comedy bits. People love him for that, and for years he's been able to ride that wave of public affection like it's bulletproof armor. But here's the truth that people don't always want to face. When you strip away the charm and the rehearsed jokes, what you're left with isn't nearly as pretty. Because the problem with Ryan Reynolds is that so much of his humor is just mean-spirited. It's dismissive, it's punching down at people who don't deserve it, and instead of showing real character when it counts, he hides behind sarcasm like it's a shield. And nothing shows that side of him more clearly than the way he recently handled a moment on the red carpet when a child was trying to interview him. Now, picture this for a second. A little kid, nervous but excited, holding a microphone that's probably way too big for him, standing there surrounded by flashing cameras and screaming fans, about to interview Ryan Reynolds at one of the biggest film festivals in the world. For a child, that's overwhelming. That's not just another day on the job, that's a moment that kid is going to remember for the rest of his life. And what does Ryan do when he walks up to him? Does he smile warmly, kneel down so they're eye to eye, and introduce himself in a way that puts the kid at ease? No. He goes straight into being sarcastic and dismissive. He bends down halfway, calls himself a monster for not going lower, and then immediately skips past all the normal kindness you would expect in that situation and says, "What's your question for me, buddy?" It wasn't friendly, it wasn't welcoming, it was like he was saying, "All right, kid, hurry up and do your little thing so I can move on." And the worst part is, this isn't just some random celebrity who doesn't have kids and doesn't understand how children think. Ryan Reynolds is a father of 4. He knows exactly how fragile kids' confidence can be, how easily they can be intimidated, and yet, in this moment, he didn't bother to use any of that knowledge. He wasn't thinking about the child in front of him, he was thinking about the cameras, about maintaining that witty, sarcastic persona. The kid asked him a harmless question about Chipotle mayo on his Tim Hortons breakfast sandwich, literally the kind of silly question that's perfect for a kid reporter to ask. And instead of making it fun and wholesome, Ryan had to turn it into a performance. He joked about sending a strongly worded letter to the chef, making it vicious, but then added that he'd sign the kid's name on it instead. For an adult, sure, you might hear that and chuckle. But for a kid, that's not funny, that's confusing. It makes them feel like they're part of a joke they don't get, like they're being laughed at instead of laughed with. And people noticed right away. The reaction online wasn't, "Oh wow, Ryan is so funny." It was people calling him out for being unnecessarily mean to a child. One person said straight up, "There's nothing funny about this. Kids don't understand sarcasm like that, it just comes off as mean." And they're right. Another person added, "Way to ruin somebody's confidence." That child was probably nervous already, and instead of lifting him up, Ryan made it worse. And that's exactly what happened. Because moments like this aren't about the joke landing with adults, they're about making a kid feel proud of themselves, and Ryan completely missed that opportunity. He was too busy being Ryan Reynolds the character, not Ryan Reynolds the human being. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because this isn't an isolated thing, this is a pattern. Ryan has this way of presenting himself like he's the lovable underdog, the guy who doesn't take himself too seriously. But when you pay attention, what you actually see is someone who constantly dodges accountability and uses humor as a way to mask his flaws. For example, not long after that red carpet moment, Ryan decided to share a story about working with Denzel Washington on the set of Safe House back in 2012. Now, if you know anything about movie sets, you know how strict they are when it comes to professionalism. Phones are supposed to be off. Everyone is there to work. It's a high-pressure environment where even the smallest mistake can cost thousands of dollars. But what does Ryan do? His phone goes off in the middle of a scene. Now, accidents happen, sure, but it's what you do afterward that shows what kind of person you are. A professional would own up immediately. "My bad, I'm so sorry, it won't happen again." Simple. But Ryan didn't do that. Instead, he sat there pretending it wasn't his phone, letting the crew, the director, and even Denzel Washington stop in the middle of filming to figure out whose phone had ruined the shot. And he didn't just sit there quietly. He joined in on the outrage, standing up and pointing the finger like, "Yeah, whose phone is that?" as if he wasn't the culprit. He let suspicion fall on the people around him, people who didn't have the same power or status he did, people who could have gotten into serious trouble if the blame landed on them. And years later, when he retold this story, instead of being embarrassed, he played it like a comedy routine. He laughed, he called himself dumb in a way that was supposed to make it endearing, and he turned the whole thing into a funny anecdote for the audience. But if you actually think about what he's admitting, it's not funny at all. He's basically bragging about the fact that he didn't take responsibility and let other people take the fall for his mistake. That's not charming, that's selfish. That's the kind of behavior that shows someone cares more about protecting their own image than about doing the right thing. And this is what I mean when I say Ryan Reynolds hides behind humor. He takes moments where he should have been humble, where he should have admitted fault, and instead spins them into jokes. And people eat it up because they're used to seeing him as the funny guy, the guy who can turn anything into a punchline. But if you actually listen to what he's saying, the stories don't make him look good. They make him look careless, arrogant, and unwilling to own up when he's wrong. He doesn't come across as a man who's learning from his mistakes. He comes across as a man who thinks he's too clever to ever really be held accountable. And that's the bigger issue here. It's not just about one awkward red carpet moment with a kid or one phone going off on a movie set. It's about the pattern. It's about the way Ryan constantly positions himself above others, whether it's a child reporter who doesn't get the joke or a crew member who could have taken the heat for his mistake. He's built his whole brand on being the relatable funny guy. But relatability isn't about making people feel small so you can look witty. It's about empathy. It's about being able to connect with people on their level, not making them the butt of your humor. What makes it worse is that Ryan's behavior stands out even more when you remember that he has kids of his own. Imagine if one of his children were in that little boy's position on the red carpet. Would he want someone dismissing them, joking at their expense, making them feel uncomfortable in front of the world? Of course not. But he didn't extend that same empathy to Liam, and that says a lot about how much of his so-called family man persona is just branding. Because when you really look at the way he treats other people's kids, it doesn't line up. I think the reason people reacted so strongly online is because it was one of those rare, unpolished moments where the mask slipped. Normally, Ryan's jokes are crafted for social media, rehearsed for interviews, or polished in a way that makes them go viral for all the right reasons. But on the red carpet, you can't script everything. You can't always control how you come across. And in that moment, the real Ryan Reynolds showed up. Not the charming one, not the quick-witted one, but the arrogant one who doesn't feel like he owes basic kindness to someone beneath him. And that's something a lot of people are starting to notice now. The comments weren't just about one situation, they were about a pattern. People called him unkind, condescending, even unhinged. Some said he and his wife Blake Lively treat people they think are beneath them, with rudeness disguised as banter. And honestly, I can see that. Because when you put all the pieces together, the way he brushed off the kid, the way he dodged responsibility with Denzel, the way he constantly turns potentially serious moments into jokes, it paints a picture of someone who's more concerned about looking funny than about actually being decent. And look, I get it. Sarcasm is his thing. It's what made him famous. It's what people expect from him. But there's a time and place for sarcasm, and when you're dealing with a child, that's not it. When you're working on a set with hundreds of people relying on professionalism, that's not it. Sarcasm isn't a replacement for accountability. It isn't an excuse for bad behavior. And at some point, Ryan has to realize that if he keeps leaning on that same defense mechanism, people are going to stop finding it charming. Because here's the truth, jokes eventually lose their shine if they're always used to cover up flaws. Fans are forgiving when you make mistakes and own them. People respect humility. But if every mistake is turned into a punchline, if every opportunity to be decent is replaced with sarcasm, eventually the audience gets tired. Eventually people see through the act. And with Ryan Reynolds, I think that process has already started. When people looked at that red carpet clip, they didn't see the witty Ryan Reynolds they were used to. They saw someone being unnecessarily mean to a kid. When they listened to his story about Denzel, they didn't hear a funny anecdote. They heard a man bragging about refusing to take responsibility. And those things stick. Because once you notice them, you can't unsee them. The next time he cracks a sarcastic joke, instead of laughing, you're thinking, wait a second, is this just another way for him to avoid being real? And that's the danger for Ryan. He spent so long perfecting the character of Ryan Reynolds, the funny guy, that maybe he's forgotten how to just be Ryan Reynolds, the person. Maybe he doesn't even know how to switch it off anymore. And if that's the case, then the moments where the mask flips are going to become more and more damaging. Because when people see arrogance instead of charm, cruelty instead of wit, selfishness instead of self-deprecation, it breaks the illusion. And once the illusion breaks, it's hard to put it back together. So yeah, maybe Ryan Reynolds is still one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Maybe he still has millions of fans who adore him, but the cracks are showing. And those cracks tell a story that's very different from the one he's been selling us for years. A story where the jokes aren't really jokes, they're shields. A story where the funny guy act is just a mask hiding arrogance and insecurity. A story where the so-called lovable celebrity isn't all that lovable when you look closely. And the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to be for him to keep hiding behind the punchlines. Because eventually the world stops laughing. And when that happens, Ryan Reynolds will have to face who he really is without the safety net of sarcasm. And honestly, based on what we've seen so far, I'm not sure he's ready for that.